You know, I was originally going to go into like this whole thing about two things kind of going together hand in hand, like peanut butter and chocolate, Bert and Ernie, ice cream and bacon. But y'all see the thumbnail, you know what you're in for. Hey, this is Stitch 1993, and I just wanted to kind of reminisce about something that we just don't see anymore, and that's Pixar video games. Yep, Pixar video games been around for a while, with the last one technically being the Lego Incredibles game that released back in 2018. But for a while, especially, for me growing up in the 90s and 2000s, when you got a Pixar movie, you got a Pixar video game. And I chose the PS2 because the console got a lot more games than the other ones did. So yeah, of course, starting with the PlayStation 2, this console, of course, is one of the best selling consoles of all time, selling close to now, what is it? The official numbers being around 160 million or so. It released, of course, in October of 2000 here in America, and didn't get discontinued until January of 2013. So it got most of the Pixar's library of what I would consider their golden age. So I'm going to start with Monsters Inc. and we're going to move all the way up to Toy Story 3. And I'm just going to get my thoughts a little bit on each one. Growing up, I didn't really play a lot of these. I did play some of them though, and some of them did release on multiple platforms later on both the PlayStation 2 generation of type of consoles, as well as the next set of consoles, such as the PS3 and 360. So, yeah, this is kind of a interesting look back, if you will. And we're going to start with the first one, being Monsters Inc., releasing on the PlayStation 2 in 2002. So this is kind of an odd one. Now, if you try to look up Monsters Inc. video games online, it's going to show you Scream Team, and that's not this game. This is just strictly Monsters Inc. It's not even called Monsters Inc. the video game. It's literally Disney's Pixar's Monsters Inc. for the PS2. But I like to think that it probably came out around the same time there. And if you don't know the plot of Monsters Inc., it's about a world where screams are the basically fuel for the monsters, and the monsters scaring kids from underneath their bed and in their closets. That's just their day job. So, and then eventually one of the kids gets loose and you try to get them back to their door. So that is where the game starts. You play as Sully, or sometimes you play as Mike, going around trying to pick up canisters and other little collectibles, while also trying to reach Boo. Now, for a lot of these games, they are going to be under my favorite category, 3D platformer collectathons, which is having the its height of popularity during this console generation. Yep, some of the, probably ask anybody, and some of the best games for PS2, GameCube, and the Xbox were 3D platformers, and we really haven't gotten as many as we did during that generation, the generation prior. We've gotten more of the we got more of the 2D side scrollers that made a comeback around the late 2000s, and I feel like we're just now starting to get back into 3D platformers being a thing again. But you basically, you're jumping around, you're collecting 3D objects, and you're trying not to get hurt. There's not a lot of things that can damage you in this game. It does introduce a sneaking around option that you do every once in a while, and it really doesn't work, mainly because they have you being Sully when doing this, which sure looks fine for comedic effects, but for gameplay wise really doesn't work well. What does work well is the platforming, collecting, and these levels are huge. I was kind of blown away with the epicness of some of these levels there. Like, you start off, at the main building in the locker rooms, but eventually you get down into the nitty-gritty of these things, and wow, yeah, these things are these are multiple moving areas and secret doors and what have you. I was a little and this came up a lot in a lot of the games. I was like so ready to like just listen to the Monsters Inc. music, the orchestrated music, over and over again in this game, and I turned the game on and it's just kind of generic, almost music, if you will. Yeah, so it kind of gets the idea across, but I guess after a while you would get tired of listening to the music from the movie, but that's just me. Moving on to Finding Nemo, which released in North America in 2003. What I found interesting for both Monsters Inc. and this game was that it showed the trailer. Like, this happens a lot in these games, was they don't have an introductory, film for the video game. It's literally just the trailer. And for Monsters Inc., going back to that a little bit, it was the teaser trailer. It's not even the full trailer. It was literally the teaser trailer that played in front of Toy Story 2 of Mike and Sully getting into the wrong room, and then, Sully goes back in, there's a dog growling off screen, and then eventually Mike gets pulled back in by Sully. Same thing here with Finding Nemo. You get the regular trailer, and yeah, that's it. I found that kind of interesting. I mean, I guess it makes sense. You're just like, you know what you're going to be in for when you buy Finding Nemo. You're going to be, playing as Marlin or playing as Dory, trying to find Nemo. But actually, you do start off playing as Nemo, and I was actually kind of astonished that this was actually a pretty good game. Like, I judged this game by its cover way too harshly. Like, so Finding Nemo is one of my top 10 all-time favorite films. Like the Nemo Egg song, I used it as the song that I walked down during my wedding. I'm a huge fan of this movie, but I looked at that box cover and I was like, no, that's gonna be so bad. Skip. And then, later on I was like, I kind of want to talk about all these games, and also just try them out and see what worked and what didn't. And holy crap, Finding Nemo was like one of the better ones. So for the most part, it's just a side scroller, but sometimes you do have like these auto moving sort of stages, kind of like Crash Bandicoot, where it's from right behind you and you just got a straight path. And it's got, of course, a lot of collectibles. And you also, you get some power-ups and stuff. And it's got a little bit of backtracking, and you can always replay levels to get every single piece of thing that you lost. Of course, that unlocks other little videos and artwork and stuff like that. So if you're just playing it to play the game, you don't really have to worry about that. But if you're trying to go for 100%, it's a nice little incentive. And again, it didn't have music from, didn't have the Newman music. It had its own orchestrated music for the game. But yeah, like, holy crap. I didn't play the full game because I just don't have the time to play, 13 full games, which, according to howlongdoesitTake.com, could last between 2 to 5 hours each. So I'm looking at like a week worth of playing all these games and trying to get footage and then me editing it. I just don't have that type of time right now. So I did give myself about an hour or two of gameplay, and like with Finding Nemo, I had to like stop myself and remind myself I have other games I need to play. We gotta be done with this one. Go back to it later. So yeah. All right. So next we have The Incredibles, which released in here in North America in November of 2004. Again, it showed the teaser trailers, the opening film, and this was actually one of the games I grew up with. This was one of the first PS2 games I ever played. It was this and Lego Star Wars. And yeah, it's fine. It's a normal beat 'em up game. You depending on the level, you play as Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl / Mrs. Incredible, Frozone, and it takes you through the plot of the movie with some added levels in there to, you know, fluff out the time. And, you know, it's fine if you want a good, you know, decent beat 'em up game and you like Incredibles, definitely give this one a go. Now, what was interesting is that it got a sequel. And I'm not talking about The Incredibles 2. No. We didn't get a game for that one. Well, technically we did. We got the Lego Incredibles game is for that movie. But long before that movie came out, THQ decided to make a direct sequel to the movie in video game form called The Incredibles Rise of the Underminer. And this was the better game. This is still a beat 'em up, and you only get to choose between Mr. Incredible and Frozone. However, it's got some RPG elements to it. So yeah, you're going around beating up miners, mostly robots, but robot miners. And no, not children, but you know what I mean. The N-E-R, not N-O-R. And yeah, so you can level up, get more health, get different attacks, and you can swap one of them on a dime, or you can, you know, have a second player helping you out, kind of like a Lego game. And man, this was another one that I was like, I had to stop myself from like playing through the whole game, because it's like, I have to get more get footage through all these games, otherwise it's going to take me forever to make this video. And this was one I was like, I'm going to go back to this one. I'm going to finish it because this was really fun. And then we got Cars. So Cars came out for the PS2 here in North America on June of 2006. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not the biggest fan of Cars. Like, the series in general. I think if I had to pick my favorite, it would be Cars 3. With Cars 2, of course, being the worst one. Interestingly enough, that was like the last Pixar game that we like got an official game for. Like Cars 3, the video game. Cars is an open world game, which was kind of surprising to me. I was just, you know, Cars, main theme is racing. You would think, you know, we're just going to have like a, you know, like a car racing game, like a, I don't know about, not about like Mario Kart, but kind of like a Gran Turismo type of style to it. No. We've got a open world game with multiple different missions that you can kind of do. Some are racing, some are like go around Radiator Springs and find certain collectibles. It does have a racing mode to it where you can just race around and unlock cars and stuff, but it is mainly just, you know, an open world game, and it's okay. I'm not the biggest fan of just the look of the game in general. Radiator Springs is like not the most interesting location in general, mainly because it's set in like a desert, so it's like a lot of browns and, you know, blue skies, and that's it. Yeah, that was it. Alright, and then we get to Mater National Championship. And I thought I accidentally put in Cars the video game disc again, because here's the map for Cars Major National. What is the difference? Apparently you can unlock Mike and Sully cars in Cars Major National and can play as monster trucks. But other than that, I really couldn't tell you the difference. Like, if I played these gameplay side by, just picked random gameplay footage from one or the other and just showed it to a person, you couldn't tell it apart. I'm honest. And then we get to Race-O-Rama, which was interesting. So we still have technically an open world game, and this was just another, like, all these sequels outside the first one are not coinciding with the video game. Like, these are all just because, Cars was like the biggest franchise for Disney and Pixar for a while, so they would just kept milking that thing. So third one comes around in 2009, and you would think we would get, kind of more of the same, and kind of yes and kind of no. So it is open world. However, it's open world around the Piston Cup Championship. Like, yeah, the open world is around the giant racetrack. So you can go around there, kind of explore it, and there's, the icons to do different missions. It's more so racing this time around. It does also have a racing portion of the game if you just want to race friends. But yeah, so at least you could tell a difference between this one and the other one. So yeah, I did not spend a lot of time with the Cars games. I was just like, let's just get this over with. And I had as little fun as I thought I was going to have with those. And then I got to Ratatouille. And I knew I was going to have fun because I grew up playing Ratatouille. I did not ever own the game, but my friend did, and I did borrow it, and I played it almost to completion. So basically you have the sewer that's kind of like your hub world, and you go through all these little doorways and stuff to play through the rest of the game. And it's a 3D platformer collectathon. It is a little bit narrow, no pun intended. Like, you are going through a lot of pipes, drainage and stuff, and you're collecting, a lot of stuff. Sometimes you'll get like a quick time event little thing, and then, collecting stuff just unlocks artwork and such like that. But yeah, this was actually a pretty decent game, and it's got a lot of, interesting mechanics to it. It definitely felt like, I don't know, like, this came out in 2007 here, so it definitely felt like whoever helped design like the leveling and stuff, of course, watched the movie, but also kind of felt like maybe they played Chibi Robo once or twice, because it had kind of the same feel to it, gameplay wise. And then in 2008, we get WALL-E. And I grew up with the PSP version of WALL-E. And I got to a point in the game where it glitched, and I just could never finish the game. But it's an interesting game. So it wasn't boring, but I felt it was a little convoluted in what you were trying to do. So you do play as WALL-E, it plays through the story, and interesting enough, like, the tutorial is like before the movie happens, so you see other WALL-Es like moving around and stuff, which I always thought was cool. But you do just play as WALL-E for, I believe, almost the entire game, and you can destroy blocks. You get a laser attack, and you collect, trash and stuff, but it was a lot more puzzle based than previous games. And for the first couple levels, because it is on like post-apocalyptic Earth, it does have that kind of orangey brown smudgy look to it that a lot of games were having during this time. So yeah, even though it's a Disney film, you still had that issue. It looked a lot better once you got onto the Axiom and things were a lot brighter and you had all the different colors and stuff. But man, those first couple levels were a slog to get through, just because I've never liked that color palette. All right, so 2009, we get Up, the video game, which if you've seen the movie Up, you probably are asking, how the hell did they make this one into a video game? And I kind of had the same question. And I was really hoping that we weren't going to start from the very beginning of the movie. I'm like, oh, please don't make me play as like a young Carl and meeting up with young Ellie and making me go through the first 5 minutes of that movie. No. So thank goodness that it starts right when the house lands in the jungle area. Like, I was like, oh, whew, thank God. So you do play as both Carl and as Russell, and eventually you have Doug as well showing up in the game, and you switch between the two because they have different abilities there. Of course, it is multiplayer, so two can play at one time to make it a bit easier, but the characters will do things on their own if you let them. And yeah, it's still a 3D platformer where you're exploring the jungle. You're basically, this was like the one that was like the least like the movie, because again, you're thinking like, hey, he gets to the jungle, he meets up with Doug, and then he meets up with the bird, which I forget his name right now. Posting a picture right here. Yep, him. And then he meets his idol. Idol's a bad guy. They get into a dogfight, literally, and then he lives happily ever after with Russell. So this is just like him, like if the movie had like another 2.5 hours to spare of just Carl and Russell and Doug running around the jungles, collecting bugs, collecting photos of the memory book, and yeah, that was it. And trying not to be eaten by alligators. Yeah, there was a lot of just fluff in this game, and I was like, yeah, we probably could have skipped this movie. Right about now is when movies were starting to slowly not get a video game for them. Like, we were still getting them. It would take another couple years, but eventually they teetered out, and now it's pretty rare when you get a video game based on a movie. That not right when the movie comes out. Like, eventually, like a couple years down the line, you might get a video game that's like inspired by the movie. But you never get like, okay, like this year alone, we could have gotten like a Superman video game, Elio, Jurassic World, Bad Guys. Bad Guys would make a really fun like stealth mission based game. But what do we get? We do get a Chicken Run 2 video game. Yeah. So they do eventually come out, but again, just a couple years later. And so we get to the final one, which is Toy Story 3. Now, this was the most interesting one of all to me. Not so much in the gameplay. The gameplay is pretty much a 3D platformer playing through the Toy Story 3 story. However, for the PlayStation 2 version, and I believe it also like the Wii and DS and versions, it's a totally different game. So like, okay, so I have the PS3 version, and yes, there is the story mode, and it's just, you know, updated graphics version of like the PS2 game. However, the biggest selling point was the toy box experience, which was like this open world area where you can, you know, play as different characters, do random things. It was kind of like a very early precursor to the Disney Infinity series. Like when this came, like that came out just a couple years later, and yeah, you could definitely see, you know, where they were pulling some ideas from, and they came from the PS3 360 versions of Toy Story. But what they did to differentiate themselves for the PS2 version is they gave you a lot of different mini games and some extra mission modes too. So you've got the usual game where you play as the different characters going through the levels based on the movie. And then you've got the levels where you play as Buzz and you're basically kind of playing through like the Buzz Lightyear video game from Toy Story 2. And then you've got a puzzle game mode where you just control the 3 little green aliens through different levels. Yeah, this had a bunch of different things, and it had time attack modes. It had some multiplayer games. It had a lot just to differentiate itself, and it was honestly really fun. And if I had to like recommend 3 out of all these games here, of course I would recommend Toy Story 3. I would recommend Finding Nemo, and I would recommend The Incredibles: Rise of the Underminers. Those are just my personal opinions. Technically, they were all outside of like the Cars games and like Up. They were all pretty fun games, and yeah, I just kind of wanted to reminisce about one of the things that made the PS2 the PS2, where we got pretty much most of Pixar's catalog from the time that they were having video games based on their movies. Yes, some of these games did release on other consoles, and we would get other video games based on future movies up until about like a year or so later, and then they just kind of stopped. But then again, after that, pretty much all movie-based video games stopped, and it's kind of a trickle effect now. But I want to know your thoughts. Which ones did you grow up with? Which ones did you thought were fun? Which ones did you thought didn't look fun? Which ones were you like me, where you thought they weren't going to be fun at all until you started playing them and then realized, wow, this is actually a pretty decent video game? Or were you just not a fan of movie-based video games at all? Until next time, thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.